Hi, I'm Benji Hardy. I've got your Arkansas News headlines for Wednesday, June 11th. Big news today out of the State Board of Education. The State Board rejected Governor Asa Hutchinson's recommendations on a standardized testing contract for the Education Department for the coming school year. Something that I don't think a lot of people were expecting. On this Monday, the governor said that we are going to go with the ACT Aspire test to test students in Arkansas, pending state board approval, rather than the PARCC test, which is the test that we use this year. Both of those are tests that are aligned to the Common Core state standards, but they're provided by different vendors. Asa earlier this week said that that recommendation came from the review council that he created on Common Core earlier this year, which is chaired by Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin. And it was couched by both Hutchinson and Griffin earlier in the week as more or less a done deal. No one really seemed to expect that the state board might go in a different direction, but it's ultimately the body with the authority when it comes to giving final approval to contracts with the Department of Education. Now, several problems have been pointed out with that change to the new test, the ACT Aspire. For one thing, we only use PARCC for a single year. And before that, we use the Arkansas benchmark test. If we switch to Aspire in the coming year, that would make 3 different tests in 3 consecutive school years, which would obviously make comparison of year-over-year improvement for schools, students, and school districts a problem. And that matters a lot when we have the state taking over districts in academic distress, which is all based on schools' test scores. Then there's also the procurement process itself. Usually a big contract would go through a bidding process, but this one seemed to just be handed over to the state board on a plate with very little discussion. So the board voted 7-1 to say no to that, tell the governor, no, we're not going with the ACT Aspire. That means that we'll probably keep using PARCC in the coming school year, although nothing has been decided on exactly. But if we need to decide by the end of this month whether or not we renew our contract to keep using PARCC, so we should know soon. Moving on, yesterday Attorney General Leslie Rutledge announced that she will continue to fight for Arkansas's ban on abortions after the 12th week of pregnancy, despite a ruling 2 weeks ago from the 8th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals that affirmed a lower federal court's decision previously that 12-week ban was unconstitutional. Rutledge says that she wants the full 8th Circuit to hear the case. The previous decision was handed down by a 3-judge panel. Now, it's very hard to imagine that the full 8th Circuit would come to any different conclusion than that 3-judge panel. The panel was made of fairly conservative judges, all appointees of George W. Bush. They made it clear in their opinion, authored a couple weeks ago, that they had sympathy for Arkansas's 12-week ban, but the law is the law, and the U.S. Supreme Court's case law has made it clear that that kind of a ban is simply unconstitutional, so they had to follow it. Again, it's hard to believe that the full 8th Circuit could see things any differently, but we'll see. The governor today talked a bit to reporters about Department of Human Services contracts with vendors, a problem that he described as having been festering at the agency for some time. That includes a contract with CH-MAC, the company that contracted with DHS to create an assessment tool and failed to deliver, despite the state paying some $4.8 million for that project. The state is currently seeking to recoup that money, possibly through litigation, and Hutchinson released a letter dated today on contract procurement oversight that he sent to the legislature. Asa also talked about a couple of important appointments, including Duncan Baird, who will be the new budget director at the Department of Finance and Administration after former budget director Brandon Sharp was fired last month. He also mentioned that Elizabeth Sharp, his chief legal counsel, will be the new Medicaid Inspector General. And finally, a group today submitted a ballot measure to the Attorney General's office that would restore Arkansas term limits to their previous levels in 1992. That means 3 terms for representatives in the House and 2 terms for Arkansas state senators. House terms are 2 years apiece, Senate terms are generally 4 years. So in other words, 6 years total in the House, 8 years total in the Senate. That's what the term limits were before 2014, when a ballot measure on the ballot last November that was approved by voters lengthened those term limits, loosened those term limits, allowing legislators to now serve a total of 16 years in the same legislative seat. So this group called Arkansas Term Limits wants to revert back to those old standards and basically tighten up term limits again. If they get it on the ballot, it will be put before voters in 2016. We will see. That's it for today. Be back tomorrow.